Hey guys, welcome back to another PS2 Memories video. Here we are taking a look at Resident Evil Dead Aim. This is actually a spin-off in the Resident Evil franchise. It's actually also part of the initial Gun Survivor series that originally also started on the PlayStation 1. Now this game is actually the fourth entry in the Gun Survivor series. So there was Gun Survivor 1 on the PlayStation 1, then early on in the PS2 there was Gun Survivor 2 that was based around Code Veronica. Then the third entry in the series was actually called Dino Stalker, which it didn't tie to Resident Evil, it was actually tied in with Dino Crisis, and then it reverted back to Resident Evil then for the fourth installment, which is Dead Aim. The game does primarily use the likes of the controller, but you can also use the likes of some of the PS2 light guns that were on offer, especially the likes of the Namco, the Gun Con 2. And it is also the first Gun Survivor game that mixes between third person and first person perspectives throughout the course of the gameplay. So in Dead Aim you can use mainly the third person perspective for moving around the environment and interacting with objects and so forth, but you primarily go into first person every time you want to engage in combat with enemies. So then when you do that, then you get kind of like a dot or reticle that shows up on the screen to let you know where you can actually aim to shoot at enemies and so forth. So the game itself, the plot of the game actually takes place directly 4 years after the Raccoon City incident back in 1998. And what actually happens is there is a massive ship that is actually being used, that is out in sea and it's owned by Umbrella. And it's used as kind of like a front to make it look like as if it's just a normal cruise liner, but it's actually being used by Umbrella itself to engage in different types of experiments. And there's a new type of variant of the experimental virus. It's a mixture of both the T and the G virus. So obviously they send in an agent to try and stop the potential terrorist attacks that could take place from the actual ship. So the name of the character he plays is Bruce McGivern, and he's tasked with trying to find out where the virus is and to try and stop it from being spread. And obviously throughout the course of play that you do come in contact with some other characters, some that actually help you along the course of the story, and then others that are actually out to stop you on your journey. I remember when I played this back in 2004. The game was originally then released in 2003, a year before, so I didn't get to play it till roughly about a year later. And I remember at the time actually playing it, and it's very, very different compared to other Resident Evil games that I had played, because I primarily had played it off the back of the likes of Code Veronica and so forth, using the old fixed camera angle styles. So it was definitely different, and it took a bit of getting used to as well, because even likes of with the first Gun Survivor game that I had played, and I had played Gun Survivor 2, and they focus mainly on first person perspectives. So this here game, being the fact is that there was two different perspectives, took a little bit more to get used to. But again, the game itself actually played really well, and the story, even though not as good or as well laid out compared to other games in the series, did actually hold its own in some degree. The game itself also did get mixed reviews at the time. Pretty much you got both ends, like magazines rating it because they didn't really like the story, but then other magazines rated it because they liked the fact is how compatible it was and how useful it was with the likes of the light guns and so forth. Plus they praised the graphics. They said the graphics in the game were actually quite good, which they are. The game itself, as you're playing through it, now the first couple of times you can play it, you will take a little while to get round the initial areas in the game, because it's like your typical affair with Resident Evil. You have to get from point A to point B, but along the way you do a lot of backtracking where you have to get like key cards and solve puzzles in order to unlock a door that you've been to previously that you couldn't access. So anyone that's played any of the original Resident Evil games will be familiar with this type of tactic, and it definitely works in the game, even though the perspectives of the gameplay plays out a little bit differently. And it is actually a decent title. Now when you get more familiar with the game, a good playthrough, you can actually have the game finished literally from start to finish inside an hour with a good speed run. But again, like a lot of other games in the series as well, you would get rewarded and unlock extra perks and features each time you complete the game, especially if you can get different rankings for completing it in different times. Like if you can do like a speed run, or if you can do specific tasks within your playthrough, it will unlock additional features and so forth, like extra weapons, additional weapons, even infinite ammo for your weapons and so forth. So there was definitely a lot to actually be had with this. So even at that, you're running around a lot of corridors and so forth. Even though you're actually on a ship, the environment itself is actually quite large in scale. Very similar to the likes of previous games in the series. There's loads of like small, really dark, narrow and dingy looking corridors with loads of rooms to explore. And again, you're always hunting for ammo and likes of health and stuff like that, so that you can keep yourself alive, so that you can engage with enemies and try to progress further through the story. Even at the time, for the likes of the PlayStation 2, the graphics actually were quite good, especially for this type of game. Even with the likes of the intro sequences, the graphics were actually really well put together, and definitely had kind of like a real kind of very good CGI movie style vibe to it. For an early type of game to do that was actually very good. There wasn't any more first person style games in the Resident Evil franchise in this, or any more gun survivor games up until the likes of the more recent Resident Evil 7 on modern consoles. Capcom seemed to have kind of stepped away from that for quite a number of years, as they were focusing their efforts on likes of more kind of like over the shoulder kind of shooters with the likes of Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6 and more co-op style play. And this was actually pretty much the last of the gun survivor games to be released. Now, I don't know whether that was due to the fact is that they probably weren't as popular, because a lot of people, even though a lot of people would have bought these primarily because it's a Resident Evil game, but people may not have liked it as much because of the fact is it wasn't part of the main story, it was more of a side story. But that's not to say it's actually a bad game. If you like playing these type of games and want to play something different, this is definitely worth a look into, and the fact is that it is tied in with the Resident Evil universe should make it even more so to actually worth trying out, because it does give you a few bits of information to kind of tie in some of the pieces in the timeline together, even though it's not directly related, but it does bring about some bits of information that does tie a few of the pieces together. So I'd love to know your thoughts on Resident Evil Dead Aim for the PS2. Did you actually own it back in the day, and if so, did you play it and did you enjoy it? And did you even enjoy these type of games in the Resident Evil franchise? Make sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more content like this here on other style of games, even within the Resident Evil series, and even other style shooting games like this here on the PS2, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to be updated of future videos. And also make sure to check out some of the videos here on screen with other similar type of games that were also released on the PlayStation 2, so that you can go and check out. And again, remember to keep those gaming memories alive.